Hey everybody, it's James from Mining and Shining Idea Lab. In addition to being a Jungian coach, we're also producing a lot of content. I'm so excited to be sharing with you our very first podcast called Leaderkraph. Listen, have you ever watched a 13-year-old kid sit in front of a computer and watch other kids play Minecraft for like 8 hours? They're just sitting there watching, eating Cheetos, getting the dust on the keyboard in their fingers. But I totally get it, because what they're doing is they're learning. They're watching how other people create worlds and solve problems, and they're getting better for it. Leadercraft is the same thing, except I invite 3 panelists in, 2 from the same industry, 1 from a different industry, and I email them a problem to solve. First, they solve the problem on their own, and then they do it collaboratively. And that's where the magic happens, because as they collaborate, we get to see them communicate and get better together. And then we turn up the heat a little bit because we start prompting and probing and sending more emails so that the problem gets bigger and more nuanced, and it pushes the thinking even more. As an audience member, we get better because we're learning from them. Now in the future, I want to bring in people from all sorts of fields. Law, science, medical fields, sports, the arts, everywhere. But our first episode is in education because that's where I've spent the last 20 years of my life. And it's important. Here's how I'd recommend watching it. I would grab your favorite beverage, a bag of Cheetos, a notebook, a pen, and I would sit down, jot down notes along with these players and these panelists. And what I would do is just think along with them. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Would you do something different? At the end of the show, if you want to post your solution in the comments, we would greatly appreciate it because it makes all of us better. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and if you think of anybody that would want to be on the show with us, please let me know. Because the more people we watch together solving problems and learn from, I think we all get better from it. And I love that. Enjoy the show. Dr. White, love to hear from you with a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hamid White. I am a former executive director and principal of a charter school in the Middle Tennessee area, as well as a former traditional public school principal. And I am currently the founder and CEO of an opportunity charter school here in Nashville to work with students that necessarily haven't done very well in school, or schools haven't done well for them. And so we're finding ways to find pathways to help students learn and grow and reach their full potential.
Thanks, Mead. And Matt Resavy, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. So I'm at Reserve. I've been in education for the past 11 years, first as a TFA core member, and most recently as a school leader in Nashville at a charter school. And I'm currently have just moved to Maryland and am transitioning into like a learning and development role outside of education specifically.
Excellent. Robert.
Hey guys, my name is Robert. I am a third-year college student attending University College Dublin. I study business. I am I'm highly interested in entrepreneurship. I'm highly interested in startups. I am the head of the Startup Accelerator with the Investors and Entrepreneurs Society at my school. I interned at Quadrant last year as a money manager, as given my interest in investing. So super excited to be here.
Awesome. Gentlemen, I'm going to do a quick reveal and send you the email right now and this email has been sent to the board. And so I'm going to forward it and give you a chance to read it. Matt, can you do a quick summary of this situation for us?
Absolutely. So, Miss Maldonado's email is stating that her student currently has a 4.0 GPA. However, when looking at his exam results downloaded from Data Warehouse, seeing that he's got failing assignments and that he even attested to only answering half of the questions on assessments. When he missed some time due to a death in the family, didn't have to do any makeup work, attend tutoring. But yeah, he's still showing a GPA of 4.0. So the Ms. Maldonado saying is that grades must be inflated. They're giving effort grades, which is not why she sent her son to the school, or she sent her son to the school, and wants to withdraw him because he's not going to be prepared for college, and is going to be set up for failure long term. So that's just a big overview of the email.
Great. Thanks for that summary. Anybody want to add on? I think that about covers it.
Yeah, I think
That's
covered
it.
Yep, that's it. All right. So what we're going to do now is on your problem solving templates, I'm going to send you into breakout rooms for some independent solo work. And after that, after about 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to come back and we're going to debrief what you came up with. Awesome. All right. So what are you coming up with? How's your problem statement looking?
So currently the problem statement is that, again, there's this discrepancy between the actual grade that's being received in the mastery of the content. And we really want to get down to how we're going to genuinely solve that balance between in-class effort and in-class participation and in-class mastery, actually understanding the content in that college preparation that the student should be receiving. So we're trying to strike that balance, and that's what we're going to try and solve with some of these solutions.
Got it. And so what, in your mind, what is it that Miss Maldonado wants for herself, right? Because a problem is always like what you want or need but can't get necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what she really wants in her mind is that her son is eventually going to be set up for success. So she has put her son in this school for a reason. And that reason at the end of the day is not just to be participating in class, but to actually be getting something out of it. For him to be able to understand the content, for him to get a mastery of Algebra 1 and the content beyond that, of course, from all of our other classes, for him to actually be prepared for the bigger stage. That's what she wants out of it at the end of the day. And that's, again, as a stakeholder in this, in ensuring that the child needs to be able to achieve that goal. That's something that we have to work towards achieving for him.
All right, great. Well, keep going. I'm excited for your solution. I'm going to leave. Dr. White, I see you typing away there. What you coming up with?
Just right now looking at, the problem of a student having a 4.0 GPA, but failing tests and quizzes, understanding that participation and homework seem to be highly weighted, higher than normal, excuse me. And then we're in the second semester and we have a mom that's threatening to pull her kid out of school. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, meeting with the teacher concerning, that student and any surrounding things that might be in place, whether it's, extra homework time needed or tutoring time needed. Is he sitting next to some clowns in the classroom? Is he trying himself to be a class clown and not grasping the concept? Just, trying to meet with those teachers, the teacher to find out if there's an issue there. The next thing I'm looking at is actually taking the time as an administrator to look through the grade book and look at individual students within there to see, if this is a larger issue with the classroom teacher. Trying to make sure everybody passes for whatever reason, because maybe this is a school where you have high parent participation. And if that is the case, then sometimes some teachers may want to get the parents off their back and just want to pass them and get them out the way. So seeing if that's an issue that we have either with a teacher or as a school. And then lastly, look at what things we can put in place to really help the child if there is a larger issue, whether that be child find and testing. Is it, glasses that's needed, whatever, because maybe the child can't see, or whatever the situation is, trying to figure out what we need to do to make sure that that child gets where they need to be. But the whole goal is within that first or second thing that we do is definitely bring the parent in, and have the conversation with the parent to make sure that, if this parent has already skipped over administration and go, and maybe they've talked to administration in the past, maybe I missed that in the reading. But if somebody from the school board is aware of this, that means we're at that level, and somebody from the school needs to be able to take care of this because it's generally a school issue. And so making sure as a leader within the school that I'm sitting down with that parent and, I already have the answers to where this kid sits, what the teacher's already done, what the teacher is seeing, because that's not my initial meeting. And then, with the parent, we can look at and discuss what the greater issues might be.
Got it. So basically like a lot of due diligence at first and then coming up with the solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely want to have the solution after we've done all the work. I think a lot of times in administration, we panic because someone wants to pull a child, or we panic because the board is coming, seemingly coming down on us, but still have to go through the same process. Okay, what's going to be best for this child? And let's get to the bottom of it. And once we get down to that, I think we'll please everyone without panicking or even worrying your teacher for that matter. Just to get to this kid and get to what the kid needs.
I'm gonna head over to another room. Keep
Awesome.
it up. I'll probably pull everybody back in about 5 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, man. All right, Matt, how's it going?
Pretty good. I apologize for my dogs in the background here.
All right on. Dogs are great.
The full house here. Pretty good. Looking through the solution. That's back right now. Sorry, my wife is wrangling them. I mean, there's questions I think that need to be answered. Specifically, is this a truly a policy gap, or is this a fidelity gap? Right? Because, like, for example, if the actual policy does reflect effort in the grading, then we need to actually come back to the table and talk about what is our policy moving forward, because we shouldn't be grading based on effort. Or if that's something we believe in as a school, right, and the board believes in, the question is why. And we need to figure out, like, what's how does it connect to a college prep education.
Yeah.
Give me one. Sorry.
No worries.
The kids are walking back home right now into, so that's part of the issue. And I'm in the one space which is the kitchen table. So I apologize. With that, yeah, so I think, like, if the policy on the books is like something we had at collegiate, which is like mastery-based grading, right? I think we need to evaluate that as, like, is this incident isolated to the algebra classes scores or not? Or is it, and if it could be that it's a more systemic problem within the school, like we have a policy and we're not adhering to it, and we need to own that and fix it and train. But if it's isolated to the algebra class, then what we need to do is, so I honestly want coaching of the algebra teacher around the policy, how to use it, and also a follow-up meeting with Angel's mom to address that. And so there's some questions I think that need to be answered to figure out what the appropriate pathway forward is. But what can't continue is the fact that a student has a 4.0 GPA performing at 45% mastery.
Got it. Sounds good. Sounds good. And
Yep.
I'm gonna pull everybody in about like 3 minutes, okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
Hey guys.
Mr. Resvey. All right, what did we come up with?
Hello.
All right, Dr. White, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. So of course we all know the problem statement, and understanding where the student is with their GPA, and definitely grateful that mom has reached out and we have this opportunity to hopefully correct the problem. Always good when they allow you the opportunity without just going and pulling a child. But one of the first things I would do as far as getting to a solution is meeting with the teacher to determine, what supports the teacher has already given to the student. I want to see everything from where the student sits, who he sits next to, everything that's going on surrounding this child. Next, I will look at the grade book in and of itself, and just to see if we have a larger problem, either as a school or with a teacher, considering, this parent is emailing with the threat of taking this kid out of school. Seems like this parent's done some research on the school that seemingly has a pretty decent reputation for education. That means you might have what's called hover parents. And if you have a hover parent, a lot of times we want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. And so this teacher may be passing the student along or students along just to make sure they're not dealing with those problems. Again, the parent is reaching out to the school board for a reason, and don't know if they bypass the school or not. So want to make sure that we have all those questions answered. And then the next thing is I would meet with the parent, and once I meet with the parent, I'll have all the information that I need, and therefore I can hear the parent out and hear them verbally say what they've written. And after I've heard what they've verbally said, then I can, respond and not react to it, and kind of together with that parent and hopefully the teacher as well, be able to work out some solutions to help that child, whether it is seeing if there's a learning difference, arrange for eye exam, see if we can help out in that direction, or change the child's seat, or, find out if there's just some tutoring that's needed for that particular child, or even maybe even other children that we can help and hopefully get the solutions that we need. Because the parent again hasn't pulled their child yet. That means we still have a chance.
Great. Matt, you want to add on?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with a lot there. And I think for me, the first question I would need to answer and like really reground myself in is like, what is our policy as a school, or what is the school's grading philosophy? Because there's a lot of different ones out there, right? And so if the school truly has like, we are a mastery-based, standard-based grading policy, right? And that's what we are selling to families as why they should come to us and how that's going to make their students ready for college and beyond. And then we're seeing a 4.0 GPA next to 45% on an assessment, although that's in direct conflict with the policy. And so the question there is why. But before I go farther there, if our policy is like, we actually believe that like effort should be reflected in the student's grade because effort is important, whatever that might be. Well, then I need to be able to come back and say, okay, how is that being reflected in the student's grade to be able to partner with Mrs. Maldonado to say like this is what we believe and what we're signing up for. So I think that's the first thing to solve is like as a school, what is our policy? What do we believe? And also, has that been codified? Right? And like, is it actually written down in like something that we actually enforce? Because if it's not, then that's going to create a whole other plethora of problems. But let's go down the road. We actually are a like mastery-based, standards-based grading school, and that big disparity between the 4.0 and 45%, like why does that exist? So is that because it's an individual teacher who maybe has a skill gap, an understanding gap, a will gap maybe with the policy itself? Could it be specific to like Mrs. Maldonado is very involved and we want to make sure the student gets past the class so we don't have to deal with her anymore? Like that could be the mindset issue too. It could also be like maybe this is not just one classroom where the issue is. Is it across the entire grade level? Is it across the entire school? Because there's different solutions to those different problems. If it's isolated to the one teacher, it's, hey, let's talk more about with the teacher. Let's talk about a coaching plan and make sure that we're setting this teacher up for success to properly implement the grading policy. And then also repair the relationship and trust between the teacher and the student and the family. There's a process that would need to happen there. If it's across the school, we need to actually pump the brakes a little bit and figure out why are we have disparity across the school or not buying into the policy. Why don't we have fidelity? Are we actually checking for fidelity on an admin level and come up with a solution going that way, and maybe retrain our staff, set goals, weekly metrics, and get buy-in around that. And throughout this whole process, opportunities to invest the families in that process too. To just create, we lost our way a little bit. That's okay. We're going to fix it. We want you to partner with us. Here's our plan, and create a 6-week plan to turn it around. But I think the biggest thing is, what is our philosophy? And then why are we off track? Is it an individual problem, a larger problem? What's the size of the actual problem there? Because either way, a student with a 4.0 should not be scoring a 45 in an assessment. And that's what we need to figure out, so what's going on there. And if our philosophy is like creating this scenario and it's not working, well, then we need to adjust that anyway.
Great. Robert.
Yeah, no, I'd express a lot of the same sentiments that Dr. White and Matt were stating. Again, it's trying to identify the scale at which this case is occurring at. Again, a discrepancy between a 4.0 GPA and having a poor mastery of our subjects is certainly concerning. So being able to address if this is just going to be a case for Angel here, if this is just something that he is struggling with, an engaged student that just isn't able to get by, then we'll address that case. We'll provide immediate action towards academic support, potential tutoring, and infrastructure so he can actually make up the work that he was missing. Those steps can be taken, and I think we could really tackle that. However, if there's a greater discrepancy, and if after we meet with the teacher, after we meet with the parent, after we meet with ourselves, and we confer the data, and we see that this is a problem that goes beyond Angel, and that this is a problem that we have multiple students that are purely graded on their engagement with the class, and that happens to be our policy, and they're not mastering these courses like we would intend to have that happen. That's seriously concerning, and we would need to take it to a higher level to where infrastructure towards actually ensuring and reviewing our policy is mainstay. I'd also recommend when we meet with the teacher an assessment and alignment of goals so we actually understand what's going on. This is a problem that's been escalated to the board, evidently. And my main question would be, is this something that has been brought up to the teacher beforehand that the parent had bypassed, again, the teacher here? So there's a couple of questions that we definitely need ascertainment on, and actually understanding the depth of the problem is going to be paramount for me. And actually passing by a solution that would actually have applicable steps. We're all on very similar pages. Correct me if I'm wrong when it comes to our actual solutions and actually finding the steps here. So would anyone, I really liked what Matt was saying about identifying the policy. Would you like to start with that?
I think we can operate off an assumption of what the policy is. She's talking about a college prep, education, college prep school.
Mhm.
Having been a school leader of a college prep high school, we did make them a move to a standards-based model. So we could operate under that assumption or the opposite assumption, right? Where there is actually an effort-based component in there. I think like we could, if we're responding to the board, we know what our policy is. So I think we just should make the assumption one way
Gotcha.
or the other so that we can be informed with the solution.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, that works for me.
Sounds good.
So which one do we want to pick? Do we want to say like it is a standards-based system and there's a misalignment here, or do we want to say we have an effort-based, like an effort-based component in our system?
I think going with standards based, because I think that's generally what you're going to get in most of your schools. So I think I know the effort is a big thing and all those wonderful things, but we've been doing standards for so long. I think that it's safe to say that it's standards based.
Yeah, and it's in assuming that mastery is going to be a core component of our policy and our interest in the students, then standardization is going to be key here.
Absolutely. Great. So a mastery-based standards aligns system. Okay.
Now, do we still want to emphasize the reward for effort in the first place and not trying to undermine a student that's been super engaged but might not be actually able to pass by? Or how do we want to tackle this?
Well, my initial thought is like there's two different levels of this, right? Like there's a student who might be struggling academically, and that means like different interventions and scaffolding might need to be put in place. Versus like what's in Mr. Maldonado's email here about like he missed 5 days because of his grandmother's death right before Christmas, right? And there could have been like the teacher gave grace of like it's a lot to have to handle all of your subjects, makeup work for 5 days of work right at the end of the semester, and so an exception was made because of this situation. Like we can talk about that. But like if a student is like truly like just failing and they're there all the time and doing all the work, then different interventions should have been put in place along the way, or should be put in place.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, when I look at that, then I didn't take into consideration, thinking about all the other classes that the child missed. I know they missed all classes, but not thinking about the work that's on the makeup. But didn't mom check this over New Year? So wouldn't it have been on a break where he would have had time to, make the recovery for all classes if there was a requirement for that or an understanding? Did I get that right?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, once we look over the policy, and that's, going down again to the, I've always had the philosophy to start with the most simple thing first. And so, yeah, like looking at the policy, that's very easy to read over and see, okay, what are we doing? Where's the violation? I think the next easiest thing to do is to, put into something to the board that's saying this is our solution to the problem. So, state the problem, have a GPA that does not match necessarily the skill set that the child has, and it's not a good indicator of the child's ability. And then to, as part of that, go down and make sure we have the necessary meetings um, to see if we can to see if there is there a greater issue, but also, once we figured out the policy part, is there, we could solve that problem, like challenging or looking at talking to the board about our policy, our weighted policy, whether it's on, GPA or some, excuse me, standards based. If it's, if we have a standards-based policy, then why are we following that? Or why does this child have this grade level? So trying to, give the board the quickest version of solutions that we can, but also make sure that we're efficiently handling the care of that family that we're been trusted.
We just got a notification from James about
Yeah, we
the
do.
urgent
Yeah,
email.
I'm reading it right now.
Yeah.
And the main statement here, it seems to be that Ms. Maldonado is working with the advocacy group, a student advocacy group, and they have a press release out regarding our situation here.
Okay.
It's grading floor policies such as lowest grade being a 50, curving and inflating grades, no makeup work, and heavy weighting of class participation. Additionally, the document notes all of Algebra 1 performance for the whole state and the school being around 25% proficiency. Lastly, the press release and draft articles notes that not mastering skills and content hinders kids from getting to STEM fields, which are the highest paying jobs out there. Let's get ahead of this and do whatever is best. I'm not sure about the details, so you take it from here. Update me soon. It's from the board.
Okay.
So I think, one thing that this confirms for me is this seems to then be just isolated to the Algebra 1 class.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we're talking about an issue with a specific teacher, not our entire school overall. And so I think we can target the plan there. Like this is not as necessarily as big of a problem, but we have a plan to target it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I take the same steps. I'm quite sure you do as well. I take the same steps, whether it's media in my face or they're not. Because I treat every situation as if I tell the people that I train and even my administrators, I tell them all the time, every email, every response, just pretend like you're reading that to a lawyer or a lawyer's reading it, because that's what it can end up in our world.
Yeah.
And so how I respond to this is going to be pretty much the same as I would if there weren't any, press release or any child advocacy group, excuse me, involved. It's now I do understand that we have an isolated Algebra 1 issue, which is great. Using the understanding of what's going on in the state is awesome. Another piece of it, but it's still an excuse. And so my goal is to, how do we solve this problem for this child? And then how do we solve it? And if we're solving this problem for this particular child, then we solve it in such a way that it impacts every child that can be impacted by it. So yes, we're helping out Mr. Maldonado, but we're also helping out every child that sits in that classroom by addressing this issue. So I would just do it the same way, regardless of what is thrown at us.
Completely agree.
Gotcha. And also, I think that a component of us receiving this email and that Ms. Maldonado has escalated the situation to a student advocacy group is the rate at which this is occurring, that this is happening at a very high pace at the moment. And a lot of the communication between us and Ms. Maldonado seems to be breaking down, because if she's taking this to a third party now and that this is going beyond a lot of our grasp and our actual control, that means we have to work fast and act fast here to actually be able to get this out. So agency and communication, I think, should be one of our key points that we mentioned to the board here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think what we need to do is set up a meeting with Miss Maldonado and us from the get-go to get her in, to provide space for her to fully share everything that might not have been captured in the email.
Yeah.
Build a bridge for that communication to happen,
Yeah.
and then we can invite the Algebra 1 teacher in later, after we've talked with the Algebra 1 teacher, so that we can begin the bridge and repair that relationship too. The worst thing we could do now is not engage, I believe, with Mrs. Maldonado.
Yeah. We got to remove those barriers there that are pretty much creating a lot more problems for all parties at hand. So that's going to be key.
Yeah. Yeah, and being in a former district where we had parents that would skip the principal and go straight to their board member, you get ahead of it as best you can. But also, I think a future conversation, one-on-one conversation would definitely be, and maybe even in writing at some point, just because that's the other side of me, the attorney part of me. But is actually have a conversation with the board member, and help them understand that any of these type of correspondence and things should go directly to the school, and it should be directed to the school,
Mhm.
and not necessarily something that automatically gets an answer or a panic from the board member. Again, I've always believed that if a board member's panic, that's just a board member's panic. It doesn't have to be mine. And I'm talking about from experience, lots of it, unfortunately. But again, the sense of urgency on let's get this taken care of. But at the same time, I know that a future conversation I would have would be with the board member and even the director, who was my direct boss, to make sure that they understand. I don't mind helping and making sure we take care of this for this child, but communicating that if this parent had come to us first, we would have had this solved already. So I wonder how many conversations this parent has had with said board member or board members and before even getting to us. So even though that's neither here nor there in the major scheme, we got to fix this problem for this child. But I also want to make sure that I'm communicating, and that's based off of personal experience where I had to, go to my boss and also to a board member and just let them know from this point on, this comes through me, and establish there's a reason why I'm the principal at this school or the leader at this school, and you're not going to, go past that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like within this as well, like yes, we'll be solving this problem for this specific student and any students who are in this class, right? There's a larger opportunity here too. To right now, like, obviously the narrative has gotten away from us as a school, but it's one to reclaim the narrative and to build allies in that process.
Mhm.
Miss Maldonado is obviously very active and involved in her students' education and cares a ton. And right now, seems adversarial, but it's actually an invitation to build a huge ally in the school if we solve this and do this well and communicate this well. And so there's specific things that are being cited, right? And so just be taking in my context as a principal who did change a grading scale. Like the lowest grade being a 50 has always been justified as like if a student fails, they have an opportunity to bounce back, right? The counter to that is like, but then if students are like I get a 50 and passing is only a 70, effort gets put in a little bit less, and then students learn less because they can perform lower on assessments to still pass. Curving and inflating grades. The rationale I've heard for that in the past is like, our Algebra 1 assessments are aligned to a rigor that's preparing students for AP Calculus, and therefore they're actually above the standard level. So we're curving it to be still be meeting the standards. I don't know if I personally agree with that, but I've heard that argument before. And the weighting of class participation can bump things up over mastery. I think with that, like my questions are these like if we say like we have a standards-based grading scale, then these wouldn't actually exist in our grading scale, but they could exist within the larger district in other places. And so the question is, we would also need to address like, are these actual policies in our school or not? Right? Because if they are, we need to be able to justify that. And then that becomes part of the communication plan.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
And so what do y'all think there?
I think that's perfect. Is someone getting this information down so that we can pass it on?
I have not been typing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a few bullet points here, but not enough. I think we should go down the line order and really have a comprehensive plan here.
Yeah.
So should we do a step-by-step process, or do we want a overarching just bullet points that address all the different altitudes here.
I'm fine with with bullet points. I know that because I know we, as educators or people are that like to communicate, as the three of us obviously do, we can go down for quite a while and we can explain every little thing to the nth degree. But I think if we do bullet points, I think it can get us to where we need to, and we might type up a different email at some point, depending on the board member. But I think for the purposes of this work, I think just having those bulleted points will be good moving forward.
I agree. And I think Robert, to your point, I think you said it earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe it was you, Dr. White, about having the phone call with the board member early first. I think we actually like let's have the bullet points as if like these are what we're going to be discussing when we have the either phone or in-person conversation, and our email is just a follow-up to that conversation. I think that like personal touch of like being on the phone or being in person shows that we're taking it a little bit more urgently than just an email, and we're still capturing an email as follow-up if we need to. One thing that James just dropped in the chat for us just to consider is those items like the grading floor policy and curving for inflating grades, no makeup work, and heavyweight participation are district policies, not that we seems like we have as a school have to follow. And the question he posed to us is, what is the leader's role in advocating for better policies? So I think that becomes part of this, right? It's like within our communication, our work is like, we understand that like, yeah, we don't want to overweight participation because we believe in standards-based grading. Here are the steps we're taking to change policy long-term while we have to adhere to the current policy. And like, then we can like bring Ms. Maldonado in on that advocacy part.
What are the consequences if policy doesn't change? Yeah, the consequences are more headaches and more students are not being fully equipped to go. More headaches is a joke part. It is a headache, but it's a headache worth having to help children. But the reality is, if we don't do better, then we're sending our students out unprepared. And if they're not prepared, then, we have failed them as an educational system, as a school system, as a district, as a school. And that's not fair. That's not fair to children. That hurts children. So that would be the consequences, not changing policy. And I think in talking to district leaders, I think this would be like an example of like, here it is. You have this child with this GPA and it looks great, for as far as everything they're doing, but we're sending a child out unprepared. And that makes our district look bad. And, they give them all the statistical data, of what's out there, but we could actually outperform the state, which is right now not doing a great job in Algebra 1. And so what can this district do to set themselves apart and then come to the board with, some policy up opportunities or upgrades that will, make sure that we're tackling this and making a difference for these kids. And that could be saying, the additional tutoring, for all students that need it or whatever. But just making sure that we change the policy and give the district a reason why the policy change is necessary. Again, that was something that I'm quite sure you've had to do, Matt. I know that I've had to talk to district officials about, changing how we did a few things, and it was fun. It was fun, but I was able to make a compelling argument on why it was best to make that change for the district, and it was something that was adopted within all the other middle schools. So it's worth it.
Yeah, I think the James added one more follow-up here too, is like, what are the mindsets that might make this policy and why, like, what do we need to address mindset wise? Thinking about like why that grading floor exists and the curving exists. And it's the first one that pops to my mind is, worries about graduation rate and connections to funding there, worries about, if you do change and take that away and like students' grades drop and like we're graded based on that 45%, GPAs are going to tank, right? And then parents might withdraw anyway, right? There's that fear. And I think to counter that mindset right now, like we know students aren't mastering the content. Look at the state's proficiency rate. Look at the school's proficiency rate. Look at the fact that a 4.0 GPA has a 45% mastery, and that we have a parent here worried about their kid not being set up for success. Well, they're not. This current policy is not setting students up for success, right? And it's informing students and parents incorrectly about where students stand which then takes away their opportunity to make adjustments for themselves, right? If I'm getting told I have a 4.0 GPA, and that's what I need for the college I want to go to, I'm not going to make any adjustments or change the way I study or put more effort in because I already got the 4.0, right?
Mhm.
Versus, oh no, I'm like, I got a 45%, or even I got a 70%, I've got a 2.0 GPA, and I want a 4.0 GPA. I need to make some serious changes in structuring my habits and approaching this differently. And as a school, teachers, we need to approach this differently, make sure we're meeting students where they're at so that students are able to learn and grow, and then we can actually challenge them more. And then grades actually reflect where students stand, right?
Mm.
And right now, in a way, like with good intentions, right? Like probably because like we don't want students to tank their GPAs, we want to make sure that they're on track to graduate, is actually, creating lies to families and to students about where they stand. And
Mm.
that's just creating this negative cycle that is causing students to ultimately fail long term when they thought they've been succeeding this whole time.
Yeah. Yep. And there's no worse feeling than realizing I'm not prepared for what's going on once I leave these hallowed walls and hallways.
Mhm.
So I think that's a big thing. I think James also put in a 90% graduation rate statewide, but 37% college readiness score. Um, I think that that 90% sounds good.
Mhm.
It's 37%, readiness for college. And when I think about college readiness, I'm thinking about college and career readiness.
Mhm.
Because not every one of those students will go to college, but so whatever percentage want to go to college, I want to make sure they're prepared for that, but also even preparing them for the workforce or
Mhm.
career, things that are doing trade school, whatever that is, they need to be prepared for it. And, that doesn't look like they're preparing kids at all, but the graduation rates sound good. You
Mhm.
know, I actually have a gym membership. I don't go, but I have a membership, so it sounds good that I have it, but it's not helping. It's not helping me with anything. It's not getting the results that we need to be successful.
And what I'm curious about is the percent that's not seen there is what percent of students matriculated to a trade school or to college
Hmm.
and didn't complete. And so
Yeah.
now they have all this debt with no degree to show for it. So they can't get that job that the degree requires that would help pay
Mm.
off the debt. But now they're saddled with this debt because they thought they were ready. They went in and then found out that they weren't. Right. And
Hmm.
like that is the case with too many students throughout the country of now they're saddled with debt and no way to get out of it, truly.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. I've seen that a million times.
Yeah. Too many times.
Yep.
All right, John, then what did you come up with?
Yeah. So the first thing we did, which is not going to be, you're not going to see it here, is that we've already met with the board member, either it was on the phone or in person, to just discuss this in more depth than what the email captures. Part of the rationale there is like with that, the urgent email that we got regarding the potential press release that is coming from the advocacy group. We wanted to also show that we're taking this seriously. And we're taking it the same process we would take it, whether it was going to go, be a media release or not. But we wanted to show that like we are taking this seriously, and we followed up with email just to document those next steps. And so I don't know if Dr. White, Robert, if you want to talk through the specific steps, I'm happy to. Whatever you want to do as a team here.
Yeah, no, I can discuss the overall strategy here. I think the core component of this is setting up a communication plan at the end of the day, because that's what we were discussing before, is that collapse in discussion, the collapse in diplomacy that we had seen between all of the stakeholders, the advocacy group, the Miss Maldonado in the first place, our faculty, actually setting up those steps for us to be able to communicate with them and set up discussion for how we're solving the problem is going to be paramount here. And that's really what much of this is encompassing. We're trying to reiterate what we had said in our meeting with the board member themselves, but these bullet points here are simply stating what concisely we're going to do and what are the preliminary steps to actually solve the problem.
Okay, so I
Dwight,
capture
any
those
last
just
words?
so that this is capture those really quick so that we have them just for the audio as well. it's a series of meetings. So meeting with Miss Maldonado just to hear her more in depth and what her emails captured. Meeting with the Algebra 1 teacher to gain the context of what happened from their perspective. A larger audit of the grade books across the school to see if this is isolated Algebra 1 or not. And then to then also which I think is going to be a really exciting opportunity here, a meeting with the school leadership, the board member, and the advocacy group. Because we have at this point have a ton of data on the district's policies, if it's been effective, if it's effective or not, in this case, not, and then be able to influence and create a team to advocate for change in the grading policy to benefit students.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you so much for engaging on this scenario. I'm gonna go through and edit this, and then if the edit comes out fine, we're gonna publish, and then we'll get some feedback on this episode and the solution. Again, this was Boardroom Rumble. I'm James, the host, and looking forward to partnering with more people.